Hello everyone, it's Laura here over at Dance School Startup. I hope you guys are all well, and if you're back in the studio, I hope you're having a wonderful time. I've just got in from work. I'm feeling quite tired. I think after a year off, this week is going to be something that I'm going to feel in my body, and my voice is really low from shouting very overexcitedly over the music. So I sound a bit manly, I apologise. But I thought I'd just jump on straight away after getting home from dancing tonight and get on with this Q&A. So, first question tonight comes from Ruth, and it is, do you know if you need specific insurance for class assistants? So, Ruth, for my insurance, and this is something that you just need to check into, I have an insurance that's like an umbrella that covers anybody that's working for me under my name, regardless of the venue. So if you've got multiple venues and you've got, 2 or 3 members of staff, everybody that works for you and works under your name is covered under the one policy. So for example, with mine, I'm just going to click onto it here and read it to you. So I've got employer's liability, public and products liability, financial loss liability. All right, now there are lots of other extras that you can have, but they are the main ones that I've got. And so as I explained, within that, anyone that's working under my umbrella is covered under the insurance policy. Now with classroom assistants, it's going to be the same thing. If you're paying them, then class assistants will come under that, and if you're not paying them and they're just a student, then ultimately they're just going to come under the insurance for all of your students regardless, because they're not being paid, they're just effectively in another class. So anyone who is working for you will be covered under that, as long as you have what I just said, which is both the public liability and the employer's liability, and you should be absolutely fine. So hopefully that helps, and if you've got any questions, the best thing you can do is ring up your insurance provider and explain specifically in detail what it is that you're not sure of. Never be afraid to ask. I'm always the first one to say, guys, I'm not sure about this, please can you help me out? And so I will ring my insurer and I'll just say to them, is my class assistant covered under this policy? And they will help you instantly. The only thing to know about these insurance policies is that sometimes they have clauses with regards to shows. So with mine, my shows are covered. I think it's up to 3 shows a year. I'm pretty sure that's right, and then I can pay extra for more. And then also those 3 shows that are included are up to an audience of 500. If it goes over that, so literally 501, I'd have to pay another premium to cover it. Also, pyrotechnics in shows generally aren't covered and you have to pay extra for that. So that's just worth noting to anyone that's listening that might be thinking about putting on a performance. Just get in touch with insurers first, because you just want to make sure, peace of mind, guys. 9 times out of 10 you walk away from an event and everything's been absolutely fine, but it gives you that reassurance that you're doing everything right. Okay, so the next question is from Hayley. It says, sorry if this has already been asked, please don't apologise, always ask again, but do you find certain times work best for certain ages? So she's thinking Monday to Friday here. Currently work until 4:30 in my day job, so finding it hard to add in evening classes that suit all ages. So would love to hear what timings you use for each age group. So Hayley, obviously you are slightly restricted in the sense that you work until 4:30. So I'm presuming if you work till 4:30, you then have got your commute back to wherever your venue is that you're running your school. So potentially your first class will be at 5. But the general rule is that the younger they are, the earlier the class. I would consider, perhaps if you at this time cannot start until 5 o'clock, perhaps getting someone else to work alongside you that could take the earlier classes, because I think it's fair to say that if you've got children that are very little, perhaps, if you're looking at your 3 to 6 year olds, for example, that age group there, once you get to 5 o'clock, they do get tired. If you can start at 4, or if you can start at 4:30, that is always an ideal time for that age group. All right, so If that's not possible for you right now, then you've got to do what you can. You know, if you're restricted in some way, you just got to work around it. There's no point worrying too much about that. You can only do what you can do, Hayley. But with regards to the potential of getting another teacher in, if that's something you can do, then go for it, because they could be, you know, the ones that work on the littlest children, your 3 to 6 age range, and they could come in and do a 4 till 4:30 and a 4:30 till 5, and then you could come in at 5 o'clock and start slightly older children. So 5 o'clock you could then be teaching like your 7 plus. This is what works for me. All right, and you know, everyone's different, but as a general, I guess, general rule, most people that I know and most schools that I know, that's kind of how we work. And again, of course, Saturday mornings are always really, really useful for younger ones. And then when it comes to the next age group up, you know, you've got your 7-year-olds. I tend to do 7 to 9 as a block, and then I do a 10 to 12, and then I do a 13 plus. So my 7 to 9-year-olds currently, they usually go around to about 6:30, and then my 10 to 12s probably go on until about 7:30, and then my teens, they'll go through till 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And that's not every single night, and I think that's something to consider, guys. You know, if you've got students that are coming to quite a few classes perhaps, and they're coming out quite a few times a week, you don't want them to have to come out regularly for a late start. So it's worth just sort of thinking about that, because the more easy your timetable is, or the more accessible, should I say, that your timetable is to them, the more classes that they'll feel that they can take without it encroaching too much on their schoolwork or perhaps other hobbies that they have. So that's kind of how I, as a general rule. But you know, you've got to remember, you've got to do what works for you. I think it's realistic to say that if you've got a 3 to 5-year-old class, they're not going to be wanting to come out at 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's just way too late for them. I mean, I'm thinking with my own child, he's 4, he goes to bed at 7, you know, 5:36, he's rubbing his eyes and he wants his dinner, so and he's watching Paw Patrol. So that's how I would go about it, and just the general rule is that the younger they are, the earlier the class. Okay, next up we have a question from Victoria. It says, how on earth can I attract some older kids? I've got ages 3 to 5 coming out of my ears. I want some 11 to 13s, just a few at least, because I've got 2 children approaching 11 and I don't want to lose them. And actually, Hayley's said underneath that I'm exactly the same. I lost 4 older ones last September due to them starting secondary school, so it's so frustrating. Now, guys, I do appreciate that this is a tricky one. The older ones are difficult, and the older ones are difficult for quite a big reason as well. Students tend to start younger when they dance, not all the time, but tend to start younger. And so what happens is they get to 11 or 12 and they're already within a dance school environment and unlikely to leave unless something's going really wrong over there. They've settled, they've got their friendship groups. So what you need to be tapping into is the beginner market. So you need to start tailoring your marketing to that age group. The more specific you are in your marketing, the better. So you need to sit down and decide what it is you want. So if your class that needs filling is a jazz class on a Thursday at 7:30 and the age range is 12 to 14, then that is your marketing campaign, and you forget all the other classes and you literally just focus on that one class, and you just keep going with that for, you know, it takes quite a while for that to start filtering through, because it takes a while for people to see it, share it, all of those things. So I would do a good week or so, maybe even 10 days of really pushing one specific class that needs filling, or one specific age group that you're trying to grow. Just do a real campaign based around that age group. But as I say, the more specific you are, the better. Target that market. So again, you know, if you've got a generic advert that's maybe got on it some younger ballet dancers or some little kids in cute tutus, you know, that's not going to draw in your 11 to 13s. Of course it's not. You need something that's going to be really specific to them, or really specific that their parents can highlight and see and go, oh, that's my kid. And you know, there are plenty of them out there. It just takes a little bit more digging, you know, because as I say, if they're already dancing, they're already in the dance school, it's very unlikely that they're going to move across to you unless you're offering something extremely different or better than what their current school is offering them. Or, you know, another one is if their friends are there and then they come across. What I would say is that once you get any of that age group, you need to make sure that you're doing like your bring a friend for free week, all of those kind of vibe, because that's a really good way to sort of keep growing that age. But the biggest thing here is it's patience, because it takes time to grow your school, and then once you've started growing, it takes time for your school to age up. All right, so when you're first starting out, you are naturally going to have a much more junior age group or primary age group, and then as they get older and they develop and they grow with you, you know, your job then is just to make sure that you are giving them an experience that keeps them. Retention is the most important thing, is the easiest way for you to grow. It's much easier than marketing. So the more that you concentrate on the kids that you've got now and how they are progressing within your program, and you know, as they're getting older, thinking of new ways that you're going to keep them interested, or new ways that you can entice them into further classes, or opportunities you can offer them, anything like that, because then other people will hear about that as well and say, oh, you know, that's really good, so and so up the road is doing this, that and the other for the 11 to 13 year olds. Oh, I really fancy that, my school's not doing that. All right, so you've got to stand out, but it does take time. I mean, it took me a long time to get the senior department that I've got now. I'm very lucky in the sense that my senior department is really, really big. I've probably got around 50 13 to 17 year olds at the moment. But it's taken a long time to get there. You know, a lot of those kids have been with me from the start and they've grown. And every year, obviously, they get a year older and you fill in from the bottom. So don't be too hard on yourself. I appreciate it's difficult, but if you're doing some really serious target marketing, that will help. And also just really considering, as they get older, how you can age up the experience that they're having with you. So I hope that helps. Okay, next one is from Beth. It says, this is probably a personal preference really, but would be interested in your view. Do you find it's better to have different styles of dance for the same age group on one night? For example, ballet, tap and acro for 8 to 10 years, then they can just come and stay for the evening. Or do you find it better to have the same style on the same night, but go through the different age groups? I'd be interested to know your thoughts. Okay, so I've spoken on this before, so let me just say to start with that when you're timetabling, it's really important that you consider grouping ages together, because it's much easier for a parent to come out for a couple of classes than come out every single night for one class. You know, it's much easier to upsell to a student or a parent if they're back to back. So ultimately, having at least 2 classes back to back is definitely a great idea, and I do feel like it really does encourage a student to take the 2 classes back to back. So I think, yes, absolutely go for it. 2 or 3 classes back to back are going to be a win. However, from a training point of view, if you've got students that are quite serious minded, all right, and you might not have that now, but you might have that going forward if that's something that you're interested in nurturing. Having all of it on one night is not necessarily the best way forward for training, because what will happen is they'll come on one night and do maybe 4 hours, but then they won't do any training for 6 days. And obviously, as we all know, then from a body point of view, you know, it's not getting that consistency, and it's not getting that sort of muscle memory, that or stamina building or anything like that. So it very much depends on which route you think you want to go down. So if you feel like you would like to grow the standard of your school to a point where children are perhaps going on to dance college, or you know, are just interested in the industry in general, then I would definitely say it's important that they come a couple of times a week to keep their stamina and their momentum going. But if you think that's not something that's important to you, and perhaps it's much more of an exercise-based school where they're coming for classes that aren't, you know, heavy syllabus focused or heavy examination focused or something like that, then more classes grouped together are definitely going to be a good selling point. So there are pros and cons there. So I've given kind of both sides of the fence. So it's kind of up to you now to answer those questions of what direction you see your school going. If you think your school is not going to be a very serious syllabus focus or an examination focus, or going to attract the sort of students that want to go into the industry or are career minded, then putting them all together and doing a program, you know, like a Saturday school for one age group, or, you know, a Monday night for one age group, absolutely is going to be a win-win when it comes to upselling. But if you feel like you would like to have an avenue where students who are more industry minded and want to train a little bit harder are going to be enticed to come to your school, then you want to start thinking about 1 or 2 back-to-back, or 2 or 3 back-to-back, but you also want to encourage them to come a couple of times a week just to keep the standard going. So have a think about that. Think about which way you think your school might be going. And it's just food for thought, isn't it? It's just different ways of thinking about things, and then how you can incorporate that into your timetable. Because you can't do everything, can you? When you're first starting out, you know, you're just starting with this and that, and you're piecing things together, and things are growing at a steady rate. But if you've got an idea of where things are going in the future, then you can answer these sorts of questions, or at least set yourself up to be going in the right direction. So I hope that helps. Okay, our last question for today is from Danielle, and it says, I know you've spoken about exams, but do you believe they are important? So let me say this. I think progress is important, okay? I don't really think it matters how you measure that, but I think that there needs to be a way in which you can measure the progress of a student. And if you have a parent that, you know, particularly wants to make sure that they're getting something out of this experience, having a way to document that is really useful. Now, a lot of schools don't do exams, but they still have progress check-ins in some way. And I think that's absolutely fine. And you've got to work out what's right for you, because you might not want to do exams, but you might think, okay, well, I might do in-house sort of assessments to show what they've been working on, and how I'm structuring the classes, and how I'm deciding, you know, the what's the word I'm looking for? The class plan, as it were. So if you're working to a syllabus, the class plan is much easier because you've got a syllabus to stick to, and your end goal is that exam and making sure they're ready for it. But if you don't have that, then you need to have ways that you can prove to your clients how well you're structuring the class, that there is progress being made. I have heard time and time again from people that have come to me from perhaps other schools, where they said, you know, I just don't feel like my child's getting anything out of it. They're not progressing. So, you know, I want to come to you because I've heard that, you know, that you've got a lot going on, which is absolutely brilliant. But that shouldn't ever really be the case. There should never be a parent that feels like their child's not getting anything out of it. I mean, that's the ultimate no-no, isn't it? For a dance school business. So finding ways that you can share a child's progress doesn't have to be an exam, but finding a way is really, really important, I think. And there are so many different ways, you know, even as little things down to, we've talked about before, things like Star of the Week. So, you know, X has got Star of the Week because this week they were able to demonstrate blah, blah, blah. All right, now this could be something that it's not a massive commitment. And this is another thing I've said, be careful when you set up these things, how often you do them. I mean, I've seen schools that will do a Star of the Week literally every single day. And I'm going to be honest, guys, I've not got time to do that, right? But if you're doing a Star of the Week every Sunday, and it's just literally a picture in an Instagram post, that's much easier to commit to, isn't it? So find things that you are definitely going to be able to commit to, because it's really important that if you're going to start something, you stick at it, because the kids are going to want it and they're going to expect it. But it also just gives all of your parents and your audience an opportunity to see how the kids are doing, and gives them that reassurance and peace of mind that what they're paying for is actually going to give them something at the end of it. And also just make it clear. So if you aren't going to do exams, make sure you explain to all of your clients, you know, this is what we do and this is how we do it. so that you're transparent and they understand how you measure things around your school. But there are so many different ways you can do that, and it doesn't have to be an exam. And if you do want to do exams, there are so many different syllabuses now. I mean, there really are, and you might find that the most obvious ones aren't the ones that you want to do. So do shop around, and I've said this before, please don't be afraid of the newer syllabus that come out. There are so many organisations that are very, very new but very, very good, and they're younger and they're current, and their choreographers are very current, and the way that they're working on their each grade that they offer is very much in keeping with the way that the dance world is at the moment. So, you know, don't rule out any of the newer organisations. Perhaps you don't know of them, but that's okay. Get in touch with them, talk to them, explain what you want out of it, and get clear on that, and then you can go ahead and offer it. But I hope that helps you. Okay, so ultimately I think progress is important, and whether you decide that to be an examination or some other form of measuring it is totally up to you.